Welcome back to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. We're continuing our discussion about Bernie Sanders' campaign for presidency, and I want to put a word in for two guests last week. We had two guests on for Pearl Harbor Day, two Marines retired that talked about what the Veterans Administration does or does not do or could do better for our veterans returning from active duty. And Henry mentions about how, and Deb also mentioned about how the fine work that Bernie Sanders did in conjunction with Senator John McCain in making the Veterans Administration more responsive, because we've had there's always been a problem with veterans returning home from active duty basically throughout our history, with the exception of the GI Bill back that was written during World War II. Okay. With the exception of that, pretty much what America's done for its veterans is say, welcome home, thank you, now go away. Don't bother us, and don't ask for anything, because, there's nothing here for you. But you want to touch on the topic of veterans?
Well, bottom line, in terms of Bernie Sanders' support for veterans and his campaign stance, is his quote that says, if we can't afford to take care of our veterans when they come home and need our services, we shouldn't be sending them overseas into war to begin with. I believe he has an extremely strong commitment, not only to taking care of veterans who come home wounded, physically or otherwise, but also, giving thought to when and where we should be sending them off to begin with. His concern for veterans is very closely tied to his concerns for making the wisest choices possible for getting involved in wars to begin with. There is a Facebook group called Connecticut Veterans for Bernie Sanders, or Connecticut Veterans for Bernie. And I know that there's widespread support across the state here by that particular group. It seems good work.
It seems natural, and this is another area. I talk on the show frequently about libertarians and liberals and common ground on important issues. And there's another one right here where the notion of all these wars that have been started by administrations from both sides of the aisle. And it drains our economy. It sends a lot of kids off to get killed or come back very badly injured, mentally, physically, and it's unfortunate. It's counterproductive. It doesn't make America look any better with the nations that we invade and occupy overseas. But here again, Bernie Sanders and talking about making sure we're getting, if we ever get involved in any occupations or wars or anything overseas, we better think about it really thoroughly about what the ramifications are and what the consequences may be.
I'm always curious when I see the bumper stickers that say, support our troops. What is it that folks really believe it is that we can do to support our troops? Is it to say thank you for your service? Big deal.
Buy them a beer?
Buy them a beer, or...
I'm not sure if a lot of those people really could answer that question.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. It's one thing to say, yes, let's support our troops, but Bernie's really looking at the very detailed ways in which we can do that and in which we should do that. I believe he's the only candidate who's doing that, doing more than paying lip service.
Yeah.
Give a shout out. Thank you. I've been advised by our good friend Roberto, who runs our studio, that we could certainly give a shout out to our friend Joe Niola that's been on a number of shows. And Joe actually he posted a 2 or 3 minute long story about immigration and what immigration does to make our country stronger, and also the flip side of that, how being sending immigrants packing or limiting their accessibility to becoming citizens really is counterproductive. This is a nation built on immigration, and it's not that, well, it's different now. It's not different now. It's always been this way. And thoughts?
I'm an immigrant.
Okay. Aren't we all, sort of? My dad's parents came in from Ireland.
I didn't speak any English when I came. I was 12, and my parents were sponsored by my uncle. We settled in Danbury, and I personally received a lot of help from people, not necessarily monetary help, but lots of assistance. When I went to school initially, teachers were there to help me. I didn't have English as a special language. Basically, I got thrown into 7th grade and told to float.
Yep.
In the 8th grade, I did well. I made first honors. And I did okay. My concern about immigration is that we lump the two, and there's two different versions. One is legal immigration, and the other is illegal immigration. And I think that illegal immigration shouldn't be, well, you're here, so so it's okay. I think that there has to be some level of barrier that you have to work through in order to to be accepted. I don't, because effectively, when I look at it, it's like cutting the line. Okay, everybody else is going in, is coming in a legal manner according to the laws of the country, and then other people come in illegally and expect the same treatment.
Point well taken, but I know that the means of immigrating to the United States are well, compared to when my grandparents came here a little over 100 years ago. You have to jump through hoops nowadays. There is no clear path to citizenship. There are incredible barriers that are placed up.
Maybe we need to revisit that. Okay,
I would say definitely.
There's nothing fixed in stone. Any process that we're doing right now as a government or as people, we need to revisit if it's not working for us. Okay? All I'm saying is that there's a certain group of people that effectively jump the line. Just like if you're waiting in a line and somebody cuts in front of you, how do you feel? Okay?
I understand what you're saying. My concern is very much for the children of people who may have come here without going through the proper channels. The children who, were born here, were raised here, have gone to school here, and I'm horrified at the thought that there are people who might be deported, who might be told this can no longer be your home because of circumstances that happened prior to your being not just here but being.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the most complicated issues I think that we have to face as a country.
And I agree. All I'm saying is that there have to be consequences for not waiting your turn or not doing it according to the laws of the country. Okay? It doesn't mean that they're not allowed in. It's just that they have to, in some way, compensate the country for cutting the line, basically.
Well, if we could interject some of the trade agreements that we've signed over the years, which I don't know. My feeling is that all the international trade agreements have been harmful to employers, employees, to the environment, to pretty much everybody. And it's NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which pretty much started this huge wave of immigration from Mexico and from Central America. It decimated the corn economy in Mexico in favor of the corn economy in the central United States, and is really, in fact, what forced a lot of folks to come here in order to survive. And I really can't fault people for looking out for their families and bringing them to a foreign country, especially a foreign country like the United States, a country that's a great country, and it's offered opportunities to so many people, and so many millions and millions of people have come here from all over the world, and made a new start in the United States, and in fact are become exemplary citizens and are very, very thankful for the opportunity to be here and live here and raise their families here. I just can't stand against people doing that. I understand your point about the about a correct way of doing things, but when the system is bent against good, decent, hardworking people that want to emigrate.
But David, you're lumping the two. Okay, the reality is that people who are trying to get in through the legal process,
but it's very hard
are being harmed because they're not getting their chance because other people are getting in without waiting in the queue.
They're not getting their chance because the laws are so and the process is so.
Well, then we need to revisit the process.
Yes.
Okay, and I believe even Marco Rubio had a process, but then he walked away from it.
Yeah, he had to, in order to stay within the his own party, he had to zip his lip on that one.
I just try to imagine what it must be like to be on the other side of the United States-Mexican border, and to know that a couple of miles in that direction there's a better life, and I can't access it. My children don't have enough to eat. I can't make a living. There's nothing here for me or for my family. I think that most of us need to give a little bit more thought to what it must feel like to be on the other side.
I've been on the other side.
Right, well, I do understand what
and
you're
by the way,
saying.
I've been on a side that was socialist or communist.
Communist,
okay?
yeah.
I've been on the other side.
Yeah, so
I lived it.
So you've seen the comparison between Soviet Russia and its satellites and the United States, and quite a contrast. Quite a contrast.
Yeah.
So we agree that it's a complicated issue, and more thought has to be given to how to make it less complicated.
So keep the discussion going. That's always a good tack to take.
Yeah, let's learn from other countries. Let's learn from Europe, for instance. And those countries, how do they deal with it?
Well, Germany's been very interesting lately in the sense that they take in a lot of folks, particularly from the war-torn countries in the Middle East, Syria and Iraq, and they've been extremely helpful to folks in coming and finding a home in Germany. And I wish the United States took a more positive approach to that, because we can see what happens when somebody goes crazy, in my opinion, and kills a bunch of people. But it's such a rarity compared to all the people that have come here from Syria and from other countries in the Middle East and have really done well by our country, that have fit in, and even with different cultures and different religions, they add a little something, and cuisine. They add a little something to America that they bring with them, but they do in fact assimilate very nicely into our mainstream.
Pot. Yeah, and I will say that I thought about this for a while. I don't consider myself Polish American. I'm American Polish. Okay.
The American first. That's interesting. Yeah.
All right, and I think more people should say that.
Yeah.
Okay, because I've assimilated. I'm more American than I am Polish. My culture is Polish.
Polish descent.
My background is Polish. I'm 100% Polish. I speak Polish. I'm totally fluent in the culture. Yet, I consider myself American first. I had another thought, but I'll let Debra take on.
So back to let's go back to the. We talked a little bit Wednesday night about the things that people are getting involved in. They're finding a group for Bernie Sanders and going and listening and interjecting their thoughts and doing in some cases phone banking, in some cases going door to door and just getting involved in conversations with people about all the issues the important issues which face us all as Americans. But we have a primary coming up here in Connecticut, and I'll let you talk about that, because it's the importance of cross registering now if you want to vote
Yes.
for Bernie Sanders to get involved in the primary that I think matters most of the two. But
Well, our primary is coming up in April. Folks who are currently registered to vote, excuse me, as Republicans or independents or through any or with any other party, must be registered as Democrats in order to vote in the primary for Bernie Sanders.
what's the time frame for registering,
I
re-registering?
believe to change your party registration. If you're already registered and you need to change, I believe it is January 26th.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay. If you are not registered at all, you have up until the time of the primary in April.
So
to
what we call
register.
unaffiliated in Connecticut,
Right.
rather than independent,
Right.
unaffiliated.
One day before at noon at the town clerk's office in person.
What I and many other people are suggesting, though, is if you do have to register as a Democrat early on, don't wait until January 26th, because you will wake up on January 27th and say, "Damn, I forgot."
Yeah.
And then,
In other words,
and then
don't
you're out of running,
hesitate.
And then you can't give him your support.
And at
So
my
do it now.
breakfast meeting in Brookfield at Panera's, we're prepared to show people how to do it and have them do that switch at any time because we have laptops.
Yeah.
You can do it online. You don't have to go
Yeah.
down to your town hall. You
Well,
don't
that's
have to
good.
pick up the phone. It's all available online.
Not only that, but you can also check your voter status, whether you're registered with a party and your voting location as well. So you can check and see if you've gotten switched to Democrat. But Bernie does need our help, and we keep emphasizing it. I have experienced a number of people who said, "Oh yeah, I'm a Republican, lifelong Republican, but I'm for Bernie." But then the next question is, "Are you helping Bernie?" And then they say, "Oh yeah, I got to register."
Right. And the other thing that we should remind people of is if they are from another party but they want to register as a Democrat to vote for Bernie in the primary, they can always switch back after that primary.
Correct.
If they hold no allegiance to the Democratic Party, that's fine. It can be
Just
a
the
very
vote.
temporary move.
The candidate rather than the party, and that's the way
Exactly.
that's the way it always should be.
Perfectly legal, perfectly legitimate, and the way to go.
Now, in New Hampshire, it's a much simpler process because what happens is 30 seconds. Did I say 30 seconds? No. 10 minutos. Okay. In New Hampshire, usually in a primary season, usually you've got an incumbent party that everybody knows who the candidate's going to be. The president of at the time will be running again for a second term. So in New Hampshire, a lot of people will gravitate toward the primary for the party where there's actually a contested primary, where there's actually something that matters. And it's very simple in New Hampshire. I mean, you could go into the polls as a Republican, re-register as a member of the Democratic Party, and Betty at the desk will remind you, well, by the way, make sure on your way out you re-affiliate. You re-affiliate with
Right.
with your original party. Yeah. So it's a much simpler process there than it is in Connecticut. But they're used to that in New Hampshire. New Hampshire's always been, the first primary state. And so they're used to all that going on.
I should be clear in that that what I just said about registering as a Democrat is specific to Connecticut.
Yeah.
Different states have different rules, and we all need to know about.
And along with what
Where we
Deborah
live.
said, if you're in New York State and you were registered as a Republican or affiliated voter, the deadline for that has passed on October 9th. Now that's 0 Democratic debates into the process and 2 Republican debates into the process. And I ask, how democratic is that?
Debbie Wasserman Schultz could probably answer that question from a rather negative perspective.
Yeah, we like her with conditions. And they're some very restrictive conditions.
What
I
are
think.
those conditions?
That she's extremely partisan. But she's the head of the Democratic National Committee.
Well,
so I
she
think
was a former employee.
Yeah.
Didn't she work for Hillary at one time?
Yes.
Well, but then again, the head of the Democratic National Committee, or likewise the head of the Republican National Committee, is when you've got somebody that you think is probably going to be the candidate. It speaks naturally that they would lean towards that person. Not that we would necessarily like it if we're supporting another candidate, but it is what it is. It's like with our media that that has changed so much in my lifetime and become so geared on money, than advertising dollars, and they're not really going to come out and talk much about a candidate that they think will not put a lot of money, a lot of advertising dollars into their pockets by doing a lot of traditional advertising. So when they ignore Bernie Sanders and speak lightly of him, I think that's, you take it with a grain of salt. It's just the way that I expect them to behave, watching out for the bottom line, the corporate dollar, the advertising dollar. But enough of that negativity.
Well, I'll change it a little bit, and not change it, but just emphasize what you're saying. My question is always, what's the agenda? Mm-hmm. Okay, what is it? What is the writer's agenda? Who does he work for?
Yeah.
How does he or she get paid? And then things become clear.
Sure. And there's that everybody's got their agenda. Everybody's got their bent. And that just comes back into what we were talking about on last night's show about questioning. Always never be afraid to question even yourself about your about the things that about issues and things that matter to all of us as Americans. Question, in the case of Bernie Sanders, question what exactly a democratic socialist is, and is that or isn't that something that you can support? And it's important that we always question.
One of the questions that we are asked to ask when we go canvassing up in New Hampshire, if we knock on that door and the person who answers is not quite a Bernie supporter yet, we are asked to find out what are the issues that are most important to you. Because that opens the door.
Then you can speak to those issues.
Right. We can share information about where he stands on those issues, and perhaps convince somebody that this is the direction to go in, that those issues will be addressed.
And nobody changes their mind like that. It's
right.
all ingredients. It's all in little ticks in the direction, in whatever direction people are moving in.
Right. And asking those questions also makes us a lot more responsible to know that we know what we're talking about as well.
Yeah. And important to note that you're a volunteer, as most people that canvass for candidates are volunteers. But
I think I said this before, but I believe that Bernie is a critical thinker. So if you look at Bernie Sanders, fieldofburn.org, there's 18 issues that are being discussed, but I'm sure there's many, many other issues. So then you have to kind of get at what are his guiding principles. And I believe that he's a critical thinker, so if he doesn't have the information, I'm sure that he'll learn it. And I trust in his learning process. Okay, I have huge trust in the process that he goes about solving problems. Okay, I would venture to guess that if you ask most of the candidates to explain the scientific method and how it works, I think they would have trouble.
Well, a lot of candidates, unfortunately, are, and no disparage against religion, I'm a devout Christian myself, but there's a lot of candidates out there that take everything they believe from one book. And it makes it hard to question. It makes it hard for them to be critical thinkers. It makes them hard to actually listen to scientific thinking and what leads scientists to conclusions. It's a sad thing that there's always been this not war, but this certain friction between organized religion and science. And critical thinking, when everything's laid out, your questions are all answered. One stop shopping in one book, the Bible. Then it's hard to be a critical thinker. But some people seem to manage in spite of that.
In science, it's okay to say I don't know. And it's okay for science to not have answers for certain areas, okay? That's where, a lot of this stuff is left to God, because they can't explain it, so God takes over. But over time, I think some of the things that we can't explain, I think religion started as a way to explain how the world works, okay?
Yeah.
And as we got better at reasoning and the process, we explained more and more things. If you get sick, personally, I would bet my life on the science, as opposed to religion.
Right. There's a component that goes involved in healing. There's a religious component, or a spiritual, or a what drives you component in that. But science has a place in healing our bodies, healing our minds, healing everything. So I want to make a quick mention again of we had last week we had on two retired members of the Marines talking about the VA and what ways the VA can be made better, the ways that veterans can be more capable of getting their needs taken care of through the VA.
Mention their names.
Oh, sure, yeah. Attorney Paul Kaczewski and Lieutenant Colonel retired Michael Zakea, both retired Marines. And I'm segueing that back into the notion that Bernie Sanders worked closely with another Senator, John McCain, in putting together a bill which addresses veterans' problems. But that's going to probably be for another day because we're running a bit short of time. But we're just going to continue the conversation as we fade out. And thank you for visiting Progressive Soup, Deb Cohen and Henry Pietras. And continue on.